Welcome to Soul Night Live, episode number 85. Today, our guest is David Paton. David, thank you for taking time out of your evening to come chat. I
Pleasure.
really appreciate it. Excited to talk about some of your new music and, of course, talk about your amazing career as well. So thought maybe we kind of start it now and kind of work our way back a bit. Tell me, what have you been doing as of late, just, in this month around the house and such? Any musical projects you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, there's a couple of projects I'm working on. My daughter has a really good voice, but she's a very inhibited kind of girl, but she sings well. And I discovered a song. It's not one of my songs. It's a Leonard Cohen song. And I just thought my daughter would be really good at singing this. So I've been working on that. I've put it together. I'm really happy with it. It's ready for release. I've given it a release date of May the 5th. I don't know if it'll be up there for download then, but I'll certainly put the video on May the 5th. I also just released a song of my own called Communication.
Yeah, great tune. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I discovered a new video editor and I made the most of that along with this song. So it's a very productive time for me at the moment in the studio. And I'm delighted about that. I'm a huge McCartney fan and I think to myself, sometimes when he puts out an album, I think, oh, Paul, come on, you can do better than that. So.
Yeah, are you thinking about the most recent one?
Yeah,
I thought it was okay, but it's no Ram, it's no McCartney one.
I know, and I keep waiting. Come on, Paul, just to give me something that makes me go, wow, yeah.
He's got songs here and there where you go, okay, that's the old magic, and then you listen to the rest of the album, and it's kind of like, yeah,
I agree.
Maybe it'll grow on me later. I keep telling myself, just keep trying. Yeah. So tell us about Communication. Is that just a single you put out, or is it part of a bigger album that's coming later?
Well, as with the last album that I put out, which is called 2020, I put that album out while we were in lockdown, and I spent a lot of time in the studio. I wasn't out gigging. I could concentrate on my own music. So I put that out, and when I started to write the songs, I had no idea that I was going to make an album. So I just put the songs up one by one on YouTube and Facebook, and I just said to people, here's a song I've just written, but I didn't say you can download it. I just said, here's a song I've written, and it might lead to an album, it might not. So that's what's happened with Communication. I've just put it up and said, here's a song I've written, and there might be more. I never know. Whether I keep thinking to myself, how can I top that? From the song, but I'm lucky. They just seem to keep coming every time I concentrate enough, open the floodgates, and then it comes in. I'm happy.
Oh, yeah, floodgates is a good way to put it. I was watching an interview with you from about 10 years back, and you talked about how it's like you open the door and the bucket of water is waiting to fall on your head, surprise you,
Yeah, I see it that way.
It's really like that. It's not really like you can conjure it up. You just kind of have to let it come to you, I guess.
It's there, but you have to open up as well to receive.
That seems like the best stuff. I mean, I'm sure you're capable. If you just went in and said, I'm going to write a song today, you could bang it out. But,
Yeah, then again, you have to have quality control. And sometimes I can sit there and for some reason, I just don't connect. I go away, have a cup of coffee, come back, try again. Sometimes it's just not there. But yeah, you can write a song, but is it a good song or is it
right? Well, I myself, I'm a guitar player, and I've been writing.
I googled. Yeah,
yes, a couple back there, and I've been writing, since the early 90s on and off, and I hadn't written for a few years, but when this all happened, I thought, well, this is a great time to do stuff, and it took a while to feel motivated. This time last year was just like, oh, music is so trivial at the moment. But after about 6 months, it's like it became kind of the salvation that I think a lot of us were looking for. And I made a resolution this year to get down the hall and record a new piece of music every week, and got 12 of them so far. So I'm on the right track, and they're all over the road. I mean, I inspired myself to write on different instruments for the first time, like mandolin and ukulele and stuff. And just grabbing one of those almost inspires a new song in itself, you know, in many cases. You know? Yeah. So, and it's a really weird stylistic mix. I mean, I don't know, it'd be kind of a strange album. I think I better keep going until I have enough to kind of put 10 together that really hang together nice, because I've got stuff that sounds like it could be played at your Greek wedding, and kind of bluegrass and kind of Robert Fripp whole tone bizarre kind of stuff, and it's like they would never sit on one album together, I don't think, but it's just all stuff I get excited about.
So no gigs on the horizon for you?
Maybe. Actually, I play bass occasionally, and I'm in an ELO tribute band called Strange Magic, and so I think that'll probably be the first gig I have this year. You know, we're getting ready to rehearse in about a week, so hopefully we'll find some nice outdoor kind of summery gig we can all play together. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So tell us a bit more about communication. What inspired the lyrical angle, and musically, how do you get started with a song? Does it always start with like a melody, or are there times when you just pick up a guitar and you go, "Oh, that chord progression kind of inspires me," and you go that route?
Yeah, sometimes a loop can get me going. Some kind of drum loop.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm looking to start a song from scratch, I might start with a drum loop, or I might just start with a couple of chords on the piano or on the guitar, and then develop from there. Sometimes I don't have a melody at all.
Oh, sure.
I'll write a song that's an instrumental, and communication started off as an instrumental with a piano vamp,
Yeah.
and it just went like.
Nice.
And that was basically the essence of the song. It came from that with a drum loop. I kept playing that through and through, and it was actually in that key. And then the chorus, unlike most choruses, this one went down a tone rather than up, you know, from a D minor to an F. I went down to a C.
Well, you kind of modulated backwards instead of forwards. Yeah, that's interesting, because, you know, it's almost like putting the brakes on rather than accelerating when you go backwards, but not always. I mean, there are ways to make it feel like a lift despite going backwards. Yeah.
And when I did that, it did sound like a lift.
Yeah.
And still, it was all instrumental. And I put down the whole track. I put down nearly 4 minutes worth of a song, all instrumental. And then I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to have a crack at writing some lyrics. And, you know, as I'm kind of locked down most of the time, well, we're coming out of it now, but to the only person I communicate with most of the time is my wife. And we were just talking about, wouldn't it be great to go on a holiday or get a house abroad? We lived in Spain for 4 years, and I loved that time, but at the time it was ready to come back. And I just thought, yeah, it would be nice to do that. And the song, you know, a good imagination can take you miles away. And it was basically came from the conversation about moving home, or at least going on a vacation somewhere. And it's odd because, you know, when you listen to it, it's a bit obscure. But when I tell you what it's about, then it starts to make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bass line, I love that too. You know, it's just, I can tell it's you from just one note sometimes, you know. You have such a unique style. And I found that true with the Alan Parsons as well. There are so many great bass lines that you put down, and often they're very simple, but they land in the pocket in such a way that it's just obviously you. I don't know how to explain it, but I love it.
Well, you know, a lot of the time I still use a pick, because I'm a guy from I was brought up in the 60s listening to music. A lot of guys were playing using a pick then. Of course, it depends on the song.
Yeah.
A lot of these project licks, I was using a pick.
I could tell. Were you using flat wound strings as well?
No, predominantly round rounds.
Yeah, with the round rounds? Okay, like Rotosound and that sort of thing? Okay.
Yeah, and for a while I played a Rickenbacker bass, a 441. And then I moved on to Music Man, and I'm back to Fender now. I can't see past my Fender Precision that just seems to fill all the spaces for me. I just love that.
You prefer it to the jazz?
I do. I like the wider neck on the Precision. The tone is not very versatile, but it just suits my playing, whether I play with my fingers or play with a pick. Sure. I can just that round sound that I really like.
Yeah, I mean, it's one sound, but it's one amazing sound. So it's, and it's such a classic. You can just, it's all through the history of rock and roll, that P-bass sound, So that's wonderful. Did you play some Wals back in the 80s also?
I did.
I thought I saw some pictures of you with Elton playing the Wal.
That's right. I did. I enjoyed the Wal. I liked the tone that I had for live gigging. I just found it a bit heavy, especially the 5-string. Playing with Elton, doing a 3-hour show, it was pretty heavy.
Sure. Well, the Wal, it seems to be kind of a choice of kind of progressive rock guys. I can think of a number of people or kind of eclectic pop guys. I could think of like Colin from XTC, Geddy Lee used them back in the 80s, Percy Jones from Brand X, all these guys. And it's like, I don't know, it's just the Wal users seem to have great taste when it comes to making great music.
I lived in England for a while. Now I'm in Edinburgh now, from Edinburgh. And I lived in England, and I was quite near the Wal factory. And a friend of mine knew Mr. Wal and invited me along to the factory. And I was just sold on the basis when I picked them up. I loved the sound. I loved the look. Lovely basses.
Yeah, they really are. Do you ever play fretless, or is it always fretted?
Yes,
I've heard the fretless. That's a stupid question. I've heard the Kate Bush albums. Obviously, you play some occasionally.
Yeah. And even on Nakita with Elton John, that was a fretless bass. Though it's not obviously a fretless bass. It just is a fretless bass. It just happens that when I first met Elton, when I was first introduced to him, we were in the studio together, and it was only myself with my gear, and I was tuning up, and I picked up my fretless bass, and at that point he sat down at the piano and just started to play a bunch of chords, and I thought, he wants me to play along with him. So I happened to have my Music Man fretless in my hands at the time, and I played along with him, and that was him playing the chords to Nakita, although I didn't know that at the time. And that's how that came about.
That's one of his best 80s songs, I think. I love that. Nakita, you'll never know. I love that too. Very cool.
Yeah.
About me and my home. Almost do a Sinatra version.
There's things that quite bootstrap.
Tell me a little bit about your bass amplification and how it kind of grew and changed over the years. I mean, back in the 60s, there weren't a lot of choices, were there?
I used Marshall most of the time. And, I came from bands. When I was 16, I was a lead guitarist in a band. In fact, I was in the Bay City Rollers. I was a lead guitarist with the Bay City Rollers.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you kind of split before they signed for their first record contract. Is that right?
I just realized that's not the way I want to go. I'm listening to Genesis and Yes and King Crimson and people like that at that time.
Sure.
And the way the Rollers were going was just too cheesy for me. I just thought,
I mean, you were not a teeny bopper at heart. You were an artist, And
you could put it that way.
Get on and do that, But that's interesting. I think a lot of folks would be surprised to hear that you were part of the early Bay City Rollers. What is the name? Where did that come from? Is the town they're from known as? Is there a bay there, or is it an
No,
American reference?
it's an American reference. It's from Bay City. I'm not sure what state that's in. You might know. If I put you on the line there, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Probably up around Michigan or somewhere up that way, I'm thinking.
It's Bay City, and the rollers were the waves that crashed on the beach in
Oh,
Bay City.
okay.
I believe there might not even be a beach in Bay City. I don't know,
Gosh.
but yeah, I believe that's how it came about.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I used to see them, you know, I'm in my early 50s. So when I was like, you know, less than 10, they were having their big fame. And you'd go and you'd see them on the cover of Tiger Beat and 16 magazine. And I always thought, who are those guys? They're always in this magazine, but I never hear them on the radio here in America. So I don't know, you know. But maybe I just was listening to the wrong station or something. But I remember that hit. Was it Saturday Night? Is that one of those? Okay.
Yeah.
I can't say I was paying a lot of attention. I was more into, I was already into the Who and stuff like that at that age. So that was more my ball of wax, I guess. Who were some of your early bass inspirations?
Well, I mentioned Yes and King Crimson and Genesis. I mean, I loved Chris Squire's playing, and that influenced me to buy a Rickenbacker and try and emulate that Chris Squire sound. You know, that he got out of a Rickenbacker was just inspiring. And so that was a big influence on me. Also was the band Free. I just loved Free, and Andy Fraser was the bass player with Free.
Sure.
He played a Gibson, and he got a very distinctive sound.
Yeah, it makes me think of that solo in All Right Now. You know, everybody's heard that. You know. Yeah.
Great.
Wonderful.
So I would use my fingers influenced by Andy Fraser, and I would use a pick influenced by Chris Squire.
Sure.
You got that aggressive sound. The same with Genesis. They got that sound as well.
Yeah,
Rickenbacker bass.
That big growly Rick, you know, on that early stuff. Mike Rutherford was quite an awesome bass player. I think people don't realize in the 80s, you know, they saw him on MTV just strumming a couple chords. But it's like, no, that guy was an amazing bass player. You just don't really know until you dig back into their history. And then you're like, wow.
And the music itself, the music was so intricate. And so for me, I was a headbanger. You know, I just got into that music so much. And it took me away from poppy music completely. And just listening to that and aspiring to be in a band that played that kind of music. Sure. I ended up playing in a band who were a tribute band to Free. And that was satisfying to play, but we didn't collect a lot of fans playing music like that. They wanted to dance, and I can't describe Free music as dance music.
Right.
We had a lot of fun doing it, and you know, there's a balance between when you're doing live shows of being a bit self-indulgent, but also being aware that your audience want to dance or whatever. So yeah, there's a balance, and eventually you have to cater for the audience, or you just don't get the gigs.
I'm guessing you saw most of those prog bands back in their heyday, when they were full of fire.
I did. I saw Yes a lot, and I did work with Rick Wakeman for quite a number of years.
I saw that a lot in the 90s. Yeah. How did you come to work with him? That must have been a real thrill.
Yeah, it was a studio I visited to do a session, and it just so happened the guy that ran the studio was the manager of Rick Wakeman. And I finished the session, and he said to me, "Would you play on a track for Rick?" I said, "Yeah, I'm quite happy to play on a track for Rick." I idolized that lineup at the time with the Yes album and Close to the Edge. I just loved these albums. So that's how that came about. Rick presented me with a track that made me think. He said, "I'll just leave you with the track and just, you know," I said, "Have you got a chord chart?" He says, No, just play along." It was one of these complicated Rick Wakeman songs that went from 4/4 to 7/8 to 3/5, stupidness all over the place, you know. Right. But I eventually nailed it, and Rick was impressed enough to ask me to join his band.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. what were some of your favorite pieces to play with him?
Well, we eventually went out, just the two of us, and we did a version of his music in a classical style. Although we did add other pieces of music that were favorites of his. And one of my favorites was Eleanor Rigby. We did Eleanor Rigby together, and I played classical guitar on that. I didn't play bass, I played classical guitar. So it was a joy playing that kind of stuff. Sure. When I heard Rick live, I thought, I was a bit confused listening to the Wives of Henry VIII album. I thought, this is nothing like Yes. You know, no. I thought I'd hear a bit of Yes from Rick, but I didn't quite connect with it. It wasn't until I started playing the music and got really into it. I got into the parts. I got into the complicity of the music as well.
Yeah.
So there were many pieces that he wrote that I thought, yeah, this is really good. This is fun.
Oh yeah, he just has a great compositional style that, you know, of course, reminds me like a classical composer, you know, not a rock keyboardist. Yeah. Although he understands the rock angle as well and can rock as well as anybody. But you know, it was an interesting situation with him and Yes. You know, Yes music, you can tell, was written by the guitar player most of the time, and they brought Rick in to kind of ice the cake, you know, so to speak. You know, I think there's even some contractual issues that kept him from just coming and saying, here's a song, Yes, now you play on it. It didn't work like that. So it's kind of, you know, when you get his solo albums, you hear a different side of him that's just, you know, different compositionally than, although I can point to a few things like that song Awaken from the Going for the One album in '77, that big epic with the pipe organ. And, you know, that's kind of about as close to Rick's writing as I hear in the Yes catalog, really.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, great stuff, definitely. I wanted to talk a bit about Pilot and Magic. You know, there's few songs from my childhood that I actually remember the first time I heard it, but I remember that one. We had gone to California to visit my aunt, and my cousin, it was like early in the morning, and they took her and dropped her off at school. And I remember hearing it on the radio in the car. So gosh, what year did that come out? Was it 1973-ish?
70, yes, 74.
Okay, because that was when we were there, and it's like there's very few songs from my childhood I can remember, but that one, yeah, and I loved it. You know, the chorus is so catchy, and I was just curious, how did that come together? Did it start with like a melody, or did you come up with like a chord sequence?
Well, you might be similar to me, but way back then, I would have a cassette player on top of a piano,
Sure.
or next to my guitar. In the case of Magic, it was on top of the piano, and I wrote the chorus, which was just 4 bars. It's just, oh, ho, ho, it's magic, you know, never believe it's not true. That's all it was. And I just pressed record on the cassette player, and that went in with everything else I'd written in that day. It might have been 10 pieces of music with 4 bars, and that's it. 10 ideas. So it went in that 10 ideas tape. And then a friend of mine owned a dairy. And bear in mind, I was working 6 nights a week with a band finishing at midnight. They asked me if I would just stand in and help out for a week and deliver milk for him, which meant getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and delivering the milk. So the sun was coming up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Bear in mind, I've got my chorus. Oh, it's magic. And I got out of my bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, and my wife said to me, I've never been awake to see the daybreak. And immediately I could hear that melody in my head, which is the verse. I've never been away, hey, never seen it. I could hear it in my head. And I thought to myself, and I could also hear, oh, it's magic. I could hear the both of them together. So it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I was lucky enough, I could write music, I could read music. So I wrote down roughly the melody that I heard, and then I headed off to deliver this milk. And when I came back at maybe 10 o'clock in the day, I put the two pieces together and they just worked perfectly. And I wrote the verse on the guitar. You can tell I'm playing the guitar rather than the piano. With the chorus, you can say, oh yeah, piano chords. But with the verse, especially in the key of G, it's a guitar verse.
Sure.
And that's how it came together.
Yeah. Well, I love the chords in that, you know. I mean, there's some sophisticated ones that you slipped in there, like that C sharp half diminished. I mean, how often do you find that in a pop song? You know, maybe Brian Wilson or something, you know, but you know.
I know.
You
I
know.
use that. You know, I remember McCartney had written a song called Another Day. Do you
Yeah.
remember that song?
Yeah, I love that song about the secretary in her daily life or whatever.
Yeah, in the middle, he goes, so sad, and then he goes, half the minute. So,
It's so sad. Yeah.
and that stuck with me. I thought, yeah, that's a lovely chord.
It is, and I love that you kind of worked it in on C sharp, and then the next two songs or chords are C and D. You know, that kind of cool chromatic kind of swapping key kind of thing going on there, that that some of my favorite pop songs have. You know, I'm even my writing. It's like, and my band members will occasionally tease me about it. Is like I can't stay in one key very long. You know, like mixing matching is what I like to do. You know, and that's just. You know, there's nothing wrong with diatonic stuff, but you tread a lot of ground that other people have covered when you limit yourself to those choices. You know, it's really when you can start mixing it up that you get some really unique things going on. So
I agree. Yeah, I when I wrote that song, I never realized that it was going to be so complex, but I'd been listening a lot to Beatles and their arrangements and their chord progressions. And they kind of go in your head and you remember them. You know, they were pretty subtle with some of the chords. You would hear sixths, ninths, diminished, and whatnot, which we weren't hearing in our regular pop music. And that's a huge influence for me and reflected in the songs I wrote.
You know, that's kind of how I got started on guitar. Is my older brother had all these Beatles songbooks, and he's 15 years my senior. So when he moved out to go to college, he left all this behind. And I remember going through those books, and some of them, you know, it shows you how to play the chord, the little chord symbol, you know, and I put my little fingers on there and I go, God, that doesn't sound very good, but it was right. It just, my ear wasn't ready for it yet, you know, but I think that, you know, they were a great place to start, you know, for any guitarist to really learn the whole category of chords, you know, all the different kinds. You know, it wasn't just, you know, major and minor. They used them all. And I think sometimes they'd find a new chord, they'd be like, George, can we use this augmented or whatever, you know? And the next thing you know, they'd write a song that kind of revolved around that, you know, which is a neat way to do it. When you learn a new piece of your vocabulary musically, go write a song and use it, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how did you guys come to meet Alan Parsons and record at Abbey Road? I mean, that's a pretty amazing place to record your first record at, you know, and
well,
that must have been amazing just walking in there. And was that the first time you'd been there, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As I said to you earlier, I was gigging 6 nights a week with a resident band. And sometimes we'd get a depth drummer, and the drummer we got was a guy called Stuart Tosh, who became the drummer for Pilot. And when Stuart Tosh depth, I always said to him, look, I've written a song called Magic. Yeah, it's kind of this kind of tempo. Just see how you get on with it. And we would play it live at the club. And after the first time Stuart played along with me, he said, that's a great song. You wrote that yourself? I said, yeah, I did. I had written the song about a year before it was finally picked up by EMI. So Stuart said to me, you know, I've got a friend that works in Manchester Square in EMI Records. And Manchester Square was the head office in London. He said, he's a label manager. He said, would you mind if we maybe get an appointment with that guy and go down with your songs and see what he says? we did. We went to Manchester Square. We met with this guy, and we played him. I had Magic. I had all the pilot hits that I had written, and he listened to them, and he said, "I love these songs. Do you mind if I play them to the musical director of the company, the MD?" And he played them the song. And that guy said to us there and then, "You guys have got a deal." This was EMI said, "You've got a deal." Now, I couldn't imagine anything better than signing to EMI, who owned Abbey Road Studios. That was my dream, to get into the Beatles work and do work there myself. And yeah, of course, my question was, can we record at Abbey Road? Absolutely, Abbey Road will be yours. And he said, they said, "Here's a list of 10 engineers who want to take the next step up to becoming producers." So he gave me the list, and on the list, I noticed the name Alan Parsons, who was only an engineer at the time,
Right.
but he did engineer Dark Side of the Moon, which I was well aware of. And I knew he had worked with McCartney on a couple of solo projects. So that was my obvious choice. And we went back to Edinburgh and invited Alan Parsons up to the studio we used. And he came along, and we asked him to mix one of the tracks that we'd been working on, probably a 4-track machine, but he did his own little mix. And we said, "Oh yeah, you're the guy for us." And that was the start of our association with Alan Parsons.
Wow. Well, you know, that the engineering on that single is just great, you know, well, the whole album. And you know, he definitely put his mark on it. And wow, it really took off, you know. That's
to say to us, "Okay guys, for the next 6 weeks you're going to be in Studio 2 in Abbey Road and record your album." Nah, it's unbelievable.
I would be pinching myself all day, just saying, like, I can't believe I'm here, you know. It's so soon, you know.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. Yeah. Tell us just a bit about writing January. Am I right that the verse and the chorus are not related? And
absolutely not. Not related at all. And January came after the success of Magic. Magic came out in October 1974. And January came out in January 75. Within that 3-month period, I had written January, and I had written a verse, and the verse is me saying, "Life gets me high, I can show, I can grow, I can wake up the world." It's because Magic had been a big success in the UK. I don't know when it was a hit in the USA. I think it was a bit later than October 74.
Yeah, I'd say probably some mid 75. It was all over the place by then. Yeah.
Top 3 or top 5 in the States. It was number 11. It peaked at number 11 in the UK, but still, that was a hit song. And so I was inspired to write January on the back of the success of Magic and it being a worldwide hit. So the lyric of the verse is about the sheer thrill of being a successful songwriter. The chorus came from my wife. A lot of my inspiration comes from something my wife might have said to me. She was reading a book and she said, "You know, the main character in this book, her name's January. Isn't that a nice name?" I said, "Yeah, it's a great name for a girl. I like it." And subconsciously, you go away and think you've forgotten January until you sit at the piano and suddenly you start singing January. That's the way it happened for me. It was just the first thing that came out of my subconsciousness when I sat down to write a song.
Yeah, well, it became an enduring classic. And, you know, there's something about writing a song about a day of the week or a month. You know, there's something kind of timeless about that, I think. And you got to a month that hadn't been used much in songs already, you know. So, Other
Uh,
like July seemed to pop up a lot, but January maybe not as much.
and these are things that I never gave much thought to at the time. Now, on reflection, I see that I wrote a song called Magic and how lucrative it is to have a title of Magic, especially for advertisers. And,
Oh, I was going to ask about that because we've been hearing it a lot on the TV in the last year.
I know, Ozempic have done.
Yeah. How did they approach you for that and go, we could twist this lyric easily?
They approached my publisher, and my publisher informed me that Ozempic wanted to do the song, and would I approve it? Although it's not up to me to approve a song, it's just a courtesy of my publisher, which is Sony. They contact me when something interesting is happening for the song, and one new thing interesting is a deal with the NFL, which I'll maybe tell you about later. But so they'll ask me if it's okay if these companies use, and I'll say, yeah, that Sony that actually own the publishing. Although what these kind of deals are like, it's a 50-50 kind of thing. So yeah, they get in touch with me and ask me, and I approved. I've had them get in touch with me about, is it okay if we use Magic to advertise cigarettes in Japan? Mm-hmm. Sure, if people want to smoke, Magic's not going to encourage them.
Right.
That's my attitude to it.
Gosh, there's a lot of songs about Magic, but I think that's the catchiest one that I can think of.
Well, ELO did all right with their Magic as well.
Are there any other songs called Magic that you like? Have you heard that one from Olivia Newton-John from the early 80s? Oh, that's a pretty good one. That has a really unique chord progression. There's some kind of flatted fifth thing going on in the bass there that you don't usually hear in pop. So I recommend it. It's her best moment, I think, on record too.
This song called "It's Magic." I like that one.
Yeah. Stevie Wonder. I think he had one called "If It's Magic."
Maybe Stevie Wonder might have sung that as well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful tune. Beautiful tune.
Yeah, but with the advertisement in America, I was a little surprised that Ozempic, I have to mention the name, they used a bunch of session musicians to sing it. Maybe they didn't know that I was.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were involved in that at all or not. No, okay. No, well, that's interesting.
So the recording was nothing to do with me.
And what is Ozempic for? I didn't really read all the side effects and all that in the how those commercials are. It's like Ozempic can help you with your smoking problem. Side effects include bleeding from your ear balls and whatever. It's like, I think about 10 years ago they started having to mention all that, so you kind of get that on these commercials. Everybody's like running through a field looking happy, and then it's like, oh, by the way, the side effects are, but don't worry about it, this will help you quit smoking.
I think it's for obese people who have problems with God, I've forgotten the name of it.
Diabetic thing.
Diabetes.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I thought. Okay. So after working with Alan for Pilot, I guess that kind of got you to know him. And then when it came time for him to do his own thing, he thought of you for bass. Am I right?
He thought of the whole Pilot for his first album. Okay. So Tales of Mystery and Imagination, the first Alan Parsons Project album, it's Pilot. As well as Ambrosia.
I was going to ask. I thought Ambrosia was in there too, oddly enough. I actually had their drummer on maybe last summer.
Yeah, the Alan and Eric Wolfson was the guy that wrote all the songs for the Alan Parsons Project. Alan didn't write. He wrote a couple of incidental instrumentals. Mm-hmm. But Eric Wolfson, who happened to be a Scottish guy, he's no longer with us. He wrote all the songs, and I know they went to Arista in New York to secure a deal, and I believe they recorded a couple of the songs for Clive Davis in New York when they were in New York with Ambrosia, and then they came back to UK and approached Pilot and asked us to play on the first album. And that just developed. And although our keyboard player from Pilot, he only played on the first album, and he went off to work with some other bands. And the drummer, Stuart Tosh, he played on the first two albums, and then he went off to work with 10cc. So that just left myself and Ian Bernson, the guitar player from Pilot, and we continued. Well, I played on 10 albums until Elton John came along in '86.
Yeah,
and asked me.
and what a string of albums. I mean, I think that's the best stuff, honestly.
Oh, me too. Great albums and great fun performing on them and putting the songs together. The songs would go from a pretty skeletal representation of the song to a full arrangement. It would take us a whole day to do one backing track. We would do one a day, and that was from midday until, well, it was open-ended, and until we got the track nailed. So there was a lot of work went into the song, and sometimes the songs would evolve so much that you wouldn't recognize it from its original conception.
Yeah, I have a few songs I wanted to ask about. Would you mind telling us a few memories
Try my best.
of albums in general? Well, for starters, one of my favorite albums is I, Robot. You know, that opening sequence is just amazing, and then the rest of the album just flows from there beautifully. I was wondering if you had any specific memories of that one and how it was put together.
It's all just blended into one.
Runs together.
Big blur.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask about some songs in particular. Maybe that'll.
Okay.
How about I Break Down? It's a pretty well-known one.
Yeah. Oh, that was the guy from the Hollies that sang that, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, they had I kind of lose track of who sang what because he's had quite a few people in and out of there over the years.
Yeah, we had a lot of guest singers.
Yeah. Did you sing backup on a lot of these?
On a lot of them, yeah. A lot of the songs I did backup. I played bass. I played acoustic guitar along with Ian. You know, all the guitar parts were usually doubled, so it was Ian and I doing acoustic guitars together. And as I say, you know, we do one track a day. But when I say one track a day, I only mean one rhythm track. It would only be, let's get a great drum track and then repair the bass if it was necessary to repair the bass. And then the overdubs would start, you know, the acoustic guitars and things. They were all overdubs. And
so you'd lay it down just drums and bass for starters, and if the bass was keepable,
we'd all play together. But we really just wanted a real good, complete drum track.
Sure.
And as I say, sometimes I would maybe have to drop in a couple of bass bits and pieces. A lot of the time, that wasn't necessary, but that would be the next instrument we'd concentrate on getting it completely right, and then everybody else would play to that.
For that rhythm track. How did you record the bass? Was it, did you mic up a cabinet, or did you go direct, or do both and blend them together, or what?
I think most of the time it would be a mic in front of the amp, and I'm sure we ran a DI track as well, so we had the choice of two bass sounds for the track, and a lot of the time, as I say, I used Marshall amplifier and amplification for a long time in the 70s and 80s, and also Orange. I used a bit of Orange, and I used an Ampeg as well. I liked an Ampeg.
Oh yeah, those are great. Did you use the Rick mostly, or were you on to Music Man by the time you got with Alan?
I didn't get my Music Man until 1979.
Yeah, okay.
That's when I started using the Music Man. Before then, it was the Rick, and I also had a jazz bass for a while that I would use. I eventually took the frets out of that, and we did a song called Old and Wise, which Colin Blunstone sang.
Yeah.
That was my jazz bass with the trying to do a Jaco Pastorius on it.
Oh, very nice. So what did you think of Music Man when it surfaced? Was it just did that beefy tone speak to you more than what you've been using prior?
I went into, I saw these Kramer basses, and I thought, that's a good looking bass. I'd like to try one of them. So I phoned up the local music shop and said, you got any Kramer basses? He said, yeah, I've got one here in the shop. You can come and try it. I tried it and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the cold neck. There was,
is that one of those ones that kind of almost look like the ones with the aluminum neck, like the funny
aluminium neck?
I thought so. Yeah, yeah. Well, those are probably great for playing on TV under the hot lights because it would never go out of tune. But that's probably the only perk.
I didn't like it, but he said to me, "Oh, we've got a new, Leo Fender started his own company now. It's called Music Man. We've just got one of them come in, and it was still in the cardboard box." And he opened it up, and as soon as I put my hands on it, I thought, "This is the bass for me." That was my introduction to a Music Man bass, 1979. A Leo Fender. I still have it, and it still plays and sounds great.
And you're a devoted Music Man user to this day. I mean, in your communication video, you're playing a beautiful blues.
I'm playing a Music Man. Yeah, although I play for live, I tend to play precision. I don't know when I'm going to play live again, if ever, because I stopped playing live when we had the lockdown.
Sure.
And I've got no interest in, well, not that I've not got any interest, I've just not been approached to do any more live stuff. Although we've been talking to the Japanese about going back to Japan with Pilot, which I always enjoy. I love going to Japan.
Yeah, that'd be great. Wanted to ask about a few more Alan Parsons songs. Psycho Babble. Any memories of that one?
I've got to sing the song.
Da 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 da. Ba da ba 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 ba. That's you.
We had a free hand on what we wanted to play. There was no restriction. There was no set idea. When the song was written, it was just Eric Wilson sitting at the piano, singing and playing, and we would take our notepads along and take our notes and think, okay, let's get together, let's sit, play this through, and I think I was just working out a bass part, and I started playing that lick, and somebody latched on it and said, it'd be great to start the track in that way, so let's do that. And that happened with most of the songs. And again, that's what makes it enjoyable to be doing that kind of work.
Sure.
And you've not got but somebody saying, here's your part, sheet music, here's your part,
Right. Nah. How fun is that? It's not, it's you can bring your own personality. Yeah. Well, that's love that one. How about Sirius? And Eye in the Sky, obviously, it's the intro. Sirius has been used by a lot of sports teams here in the U.S. for years. They're kind of coming onto the court kind of music and stuff. It's really good for that.
I don't know if Sirius and Eye in the Sky were conceived together, but they certainly work well together.
Sure.
Sirius might have been an Alan Parsons composition because it's an instrumental, and Alan did write a few of the instrumentals. But Eye in the Sky in particular, I remember Alan saying, I don't like that song. That's got no chance of being a hit, because Eric was saying, this is a hit song. And Alan was saying, no. And I remember they took a bet on it. And of course, Alan lost because Eye in the Sky was #1 in the States.
I remember.
He just wasn't convinced that it was going to be a hit song. And I don't understand why, because to me, it was absolutely obvious from the minute Eric started singing that song. I just thought, oh, yeah, that's a hit. Even without us playing on it, just him singing it at the piano, that was a hit song.
Oh, it's such a beautiful song. And there's some really nice chord progressions in there. There's one, I think, where it goes from E to D9. I'm kind of a sucker for that move. It's that backdoor dominant thing going on there. That's really neat. Yeah. I'm guessing you heard the song by the country group Lady Antebellum called "Need You Now." there was a big brouhaha about that kind of being a ripoff of Eye in the Sky. Did you ever hear that?
No, I'm not aware of that one.
Well,
Sorry.
like, it's 4 in the morning and I need you now. Yeah.
Oh, I know that one.
Maker of fools dealing with you know, it's almost sounds like they could sing that line next, but they don't. You know, it's interesting. How about Mama Gamma? Was that one of Alan's instrumentals?
Yeah, I imagine it would be.
Yeah.
And you know, Alan would present his demos to us, and he'd done them at home, and they were very rough, really rough. He used loops a lot of the time, and yeah, but Eric's songs were rough as well.
Yeah.
That's why we'd spend a whole day in the studio perfecting it and getting it right.
Sure.
Yeah, but some of these instrumentals were very distinctive and gave the Alan Parsons Project a real distinctive stamp. You know, when you hear a song like that, you would say, Alan
Sure.
Parsons.
I can think of another, or like the opening track on iRobot's another good example. And am I hearing like a hammered dulcimer on some of these tracks?
Oh yeah,
I
oh yeah.
thought so. That's such a unique sound that you hardly ever hear, and it's kind of makes, you know, it's kind of part of the Alan Parsons sound at times, you know.
I know. And we had the dulcimer player come in to do the overdub on his own. And it was fascinating watching the guy play this instrument. It was something that I had never seen played before.
Oh,
And to
yeah.
witness it being played and hear that sharp, crisp sound coming from it is beautiful percussive sound.
Yeah, and you know, and some of those parts were kind of quick and intricate, you know. It wasn't like he was just doing whole notes. It was more like trills and things, you know. And
Ah,
yeah,
like,
I would be scared to just try and tune the damn thing. It'd probably take me a week, you know. So, yeah, it's such a wonderful sound though, and it's like yeah, that's your
and very very fitting for the Pyramid album that we did. You know, it's
Pyramid, yeah.
and it got that kind of Egyptian sound to it
Yeah.
that was very apt for some of the pieces that we did. You know, like diddly-doo, diddly-doo. Very that was kind of dulcimer mixed in with a few other things. We did that a lot.
You know, speaking of pyramids, I'm sure you remember the late 70s craze of pyramid power and all that. Was that kind of what inspired that around that time?
Actually, what it was about. Yeah.
You know, the second Ambrosia album is one that you could take and fold it and turn it into a pyramid. So,
Right.
you know, they are right around the same time, 78, right around there. You know, I think a lot of it came. Remember that movie Chariot of the Gods about the Nazca lines and pyramids and all the mysteries of the ancient
Yeah. Eric even wrote a song called Pyramania, where he sings about you can put a razor blade inside the pyramid and it'll sharpen itself.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I don't believe it. I've got a lot of disposable razors. I'd like to try that on. It'd save some money. You know, just
okay.
throw 20 of them in there. You're wishful thinking. How about time? That's just one more I wanted to ask about. I kind of think of that kind of like Eye in the Sky. It kind of scratches a similar itch musically, and I think it was like just the following year, wasn't it? I want to say it was on Ammonia Avenue. I could be wrong.
Well,
It all kind of runs together for me, you know.
yeah, it does for me as well. Yeah. For, you know, it's hard for me to remember these specific songs coming together. I just remember being presented with a track, listening to Eric play it on the piano, and then interpreting it ourselves. The songs just all run from one to the other.
Oh.
There's no specific memory of how it came together. You know, I just find that because there were so many songs, you're talking 10 albums, you're talking 100 songs.
Yeah,
you know?
it's a bunch, yeah. And you were playing live with them as well at that time, is that right?
I only played one gig in Antwerp in 1980, and I sang Old and Wise, in fact, on that gig.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only gig I did with them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of Camel, and I know you played with Andy Latimer for a few albums. I was curious how aware you were of them before you joined, and how you wound up hooking up with them.
I remember hearing a song called Lies, Tell Me No Lies, from Camel. I think it was probably on the album just before the one I did with them, Stationary Travel. No, I've forgotten the first album I did with them.
Single Factor.
Single Factor.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has a cool instrumental called Sasquatch on it that I really like.
Oh, yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That was that I remember playing that. I remember putting that together. Yeah, lovely piece of music, a lovely acoustic 12-string guitar introduction.
Oh yeah.
Simon Phillips came in just to play drums on that one track.
Oh wow. No wonder it's so cool.
That came in, his roadie set up his kit for him, and he just wandered in. And he had nailed it before he'd obviously listened to it, done his homework, and he was within the first take. We just thought, he's nailed it.
Oh, yeah.
This guy nailed the track.
So amazing. I mean, I really love the stuff that he did with Phil Manzanero. You remember that group 801? Yeah, that was
a lot of great stuff. Great player.
Really
fantastic.
like that. Yeah, absolutely. Everything he's done is pretty amazing.
And he wasn't really well known at that time. I didn't know who Simon Phillips was when we did that Sasquatch track. I just thought, wow, this guy's good.
Right, he's going to go someplace.
Yeah, but I love Camel music. I love the tours with them. I love doing the albums with them. And even now, the newer albums, I love how Andy writes. I love the emotion in his.
I just love his guitar playing. He's like one of my favorite progressive rock guitarists, and he's like a guy that's always kind of bubbling slightly under the surface. You always hear about Hackett and Howe, but Andy is right up there with them. And I always kind of described him as a slightly jazzy David Gilmour. It's like they both have that. They could just take one note and get you right here. And not a lot of players do that, in other people's hands.
Paul Kossoff did that for me as well.
What's that?
Paul Kossoff did that for me as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Paul Rogers, amazing singer, he still sounds amazing now. It's interesting. Because, it's I don't know. It's like some people age really wonderfully and other people's voices kind of, lose a lot along the way. It kind of depends on how well you take care of it, I would imagine. There's the rock and roll excess does not go well with, keeping your
and Stevie Wonder
in shape.
Stevie Wonder's voice is still fantastic after all these years.
So who are some of your vocal inspirations?
Paul Rogers. I just, I dream of being able to. I just don't have that kind of voice. I have a puppy that can't change it. No matter how much I try, I can write a bluesy song and sing it. I still sound like me. Right. No matter how much I want to sound like Paul Rogers, I sound like me. I like that kind of voice. I don't go for all the improvisation on a vocal line. I prefer a good straightforward vocal line, and Paul Rogers certainly delivers it that way.
Consistently too. He's very consistent. I enjoyed that work he did with Jimmy Page in the 80s. And that reminds me that you worked with Jimmy Page on the Death Wish 2 soundtrack. How did that come about?
That was Dave Mattox from Fairport Convention. He was a drummer. And Dave Mattox and I did a lot of work together. In fact, we did the Elton John tracks on the first album. We did that together on the album that I played on. So it was Dave that called me up and said, "Do you want to do a couple of tracks with Jimmy Page?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." He said, "It's an album we're playing to sync. We're playing to the movie clips." And I'd never done that before. So I went along to Jimmy's studio and Jimmy was great, and so friendly, and down to earth, and complimentary to the work I was doing, and again giving me a free hand and coming up with ideas like, you know, here's a penny, you run it down your strings, it'll create a lot of tension for this particular scene, you know. So I'd have my bass lying on a table, running a penny down the strings, and you know that noise that you get with round wound strings, and you can hear it in the track, and it's a very tense scene in the music, and it was great to have the visuals there and do the creative stuff, and along with Jimmy, and he was coming up with ideas on the spot. Some of the songs weren't composed, it was just, let's have a jam, guys, you know.
Yeah, there's a few kind of jammy tunes on there. I remember there's one called Mall Rats and Photostats. The title alone made me chuckle, and that's a pretty cool one. Was he using some guitar synth back then as well, or was it just straight up?
Yeah, it was it was giving out octaves, you know, you could hear it sliding up the octave. So he'd play the chord, hit the pedal, and the whole chord would slowly slide up an octave.
Okay.
Great effect. I don't know what that pedal was called, but it was really good.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty neat album, you know. He's not the most prolific guy out there, so it was nice to get something from him. I really wish that he would do something else, because you know, he's beloved and we just don't hear much about him these days, you know. Occasionally he puts out a coffee table book, you know, but I'd like to hear some guitar again, because he was my favorite guitarist when I was like 14 or so. Led Zeppelin was everything, you know, and just learning how to play those songs, that's kind of where I cut my teeth, you know.
And meeting these guys that you idolize, and Jimmy will say something, you know, after the session, let's go for a Chinese meal, and yeah, come on. So we'd go for a Chinese meal, and he'd just sit and just talk and just talk music the same way that I talk music. And to be on that same level, it's a great thrill to talk to your idols, and they're listening to what you're saying.
It's like your idols are your peers as well. So that's kind of a nice thing. Did you see him use any, you know, the Gizmotron that Godley and Cream created? You know, it's a device you put on the bridge of your guitar, and little wheels rub against the string and make infinite sustain, kind of like an EBow, but you could play more than one string at a time. Did you ever see Jimmy using that? Because he used it on the last Led Zeppelin album.
No, I never saw him using it. No. I saw him with a Telecaster. There's a name for it as well, where I think the B string is, or the G
bender,
the B bender.
He used that wonderfully. That was kind of his 80s sound with the firm, you know.
Right.
And he used that Tele on a few things on Physical Graffiti and some Zeppelin, but he wasn't really a Tele guy until the 80s, and that kind of became his main acts pretty much.
All right. It's mainly a Les Paul now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, Les Paul is the first thing you think of when you think of him. But he had, you know, we all like to dabble. You know, you want all the colors in the paint box. You know, even though you may be known for using one a lot, but you know, it's fun to try them all because they're all so unique. You know, so I want to ask, did you ever meet Colin Bass? You know, when you were kind of subbing for him in Camel for those years, and then he came back?
Meet him. It was only briefly, and it's a bit odd, you know, when you're doing a job that somebody else does.
Sure.
And I don't know what happened with Andy and Colin that I was brought in.
Yeah, I don't know if it was personal or if Colin just had something else. I know he was part of this kind of world music group called Three Mustafas 3, and that might have been what he just went to go.
It might have been that. It was, I was recording in Abbey Road with Alan Parsons when I met Andy, who was recording his album in Abbey Road, and he asked me if I would participate on that album, and I said, I can't, I'm committed to this for the next 2 months. And so we exchanged telephone numbers, and he called me when he was starting the Single Factor and asked me if I would get involved in that. he's obviously a big Alan Parsons fan as well, and his wife Susan
Sure.
Hoover.
I could
Yeah, I
hear
know.
a little bit of that in his instrumentals at times. Sasquatch could almost have a little Alan Parsons influence, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's primarily why I was asked to get involved with Camel, and that was a really successful, happy relationship I had with Andy and with the band and with the music as well. The music spoke to me as well.
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
love.
you're big a prog fan, and they're definitely
Mm,
prog, you know. You know, those they made so many wonderful albums in the 70s too, you know, like Moon Madness and Mirage. You know, those are
yeah,
the
I
classics,
love.
you know.
Mm,
Must have been a real treat playing some of the songs from those because they're,
great,
you know,
great to play
stuff
live.
like Lunar Sea. That's such a wonderful one. It's such a driving bass line. I forget who the original bassist was in Camel, but he was fantastic.
Well,
Hey, you had a, in a recent interview, or I don't know how recent, maybe 10 years ago, you talked about playing with Elton and a night when he left you guys to play Benny and the Jets for like a half an hour. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about that particular situation.
he, I don't know, he was in a particularly bad mood at that time for some reason. Something had set him off. Something could set Elton off, you know, that he didn't like. I don't know what it was on that occasion, but he just like decided he'd had enough. We could see he was brooding during the set about something, and the sound engineer had to mute the mic, his mic, on certain occasions because he was using some language that was a bit choice.
A little surly.
Lucky enough, Clive, who had worked with Elton for so long, he knew him so well that he would manage to mute his mic before he got the expletives out.
Just tell by the look on his face what was coming next, huh?
and we were playing the tune, and he just suddenly got up from the piano and stormed across the stage, and we thought, oh, he's going for a piss. But yeah, as you say, 20 minutes went by and we're still playing, improvising.
Wait, it was Rocket Man, not Benny and the Jets.
It was Rocket Man. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Improvise. I used to take solo in Rocket Man, so it wasn't unusual for him to let me play for a few minutes.
Yeah, but I can imagine the audience was going, wow, this is longer than usual. What's going on here?
And what happened was he got into his limousine and said to his chauffeur, take me back to the hotel. This was backstage. Take me back to the hotel. Well, the limousine driver, by this time, the car park at the backstage was jam-packed with crew buses and gear buses and everything was. Sure. So the way out was blocked. And the limousine driver just couldn't get out of the car park. So Elton said, take me back to the stage door. So he took him back to the stage door, and Elton just walked back on stage. But there was always that wicked little smile that you would get from him, as if to say, I've been a bit of an arsehole here, but right. I'm going to get on with it anyway.
So he came back and finished the show, pretty much.
He came back. The show, and he was apologetic after the show. Sorry about that, guys. But he finished the show, and he got a huge cheer when he walked back on stage.
Oh, I can imagine. Everybody's like, "Wow, what happened to him? Did he?" It's like some of those videos or you've probably seen Spinal Tap, the movie, where the guys are trying to find the stage and they just can't find it. But that's really happens sometimes. These places, these enormo dome places. You could get lost just coming back from the loo, if you're not careful.
Cleveland.
Exactly. It's like, no, I'm the janitor and I'm banging on pipes in the basement. Yeah, there was so much truth in that movie.
Absolutely.
So tell us, how did you hook up with Kate Bush? That Kick Inside, that's one of the greatest debut albums from anybody, I think. She kind of had a vision from the get-go. I mean, she's, And she was only a teenager at the time, right? She was like probably 19.
Yeah, that came about because you may know the name Andrew Powell, who did all the string arrangements for the Alan Parsons Project. He also, I first met Andrew when, oh, you know what it was in the 70s, where record companies would record magic, and the record execs would come along to listen to the playback, and to feel like they were making a contribution, they would generally say, think you could put an orchestra on this or put some strings on it.
Oh, sure. And that's a very
So
70s sound too. You know, the strings were everywhere.
that's what happened with Pilot, and Andrew Powell was brought in to do the string arrangements for Pilot. And as I say, he went on to do the string arrangements for the Alan Parsons Project. Well, Andrew Powell produced the Kick Inside for Kate Bush. And Andrew called me up and asked me if I'd play bass on this album with a girl who, well, Dave Gilmour is a big friend of Andrew Powell. And it was Dave Gilmour that introduced Andrew Powell to Kate.
Yeah.
And he said to me on the phone, he said, David, this girl's really special. He says, I know you've worked with some great artists, but this one is really special. You're really going to enjoy this session. And yeah, Andrew had made a few rough notes of the songs. The songs are a little bit complex. The lyrics are quite mysterious, sometimes difficult to know what she's talking about. But you know, when she explains what the song's about, you think, oh, that's so clever, you know. Right. And our introduction was in the control room at Abbey Road Studio 2 again. And Andrew just said to her, come on then, let's do some work. Let's play a song for the guys. We'll start with this one, and then we just pull one of the songs out. Let's start with this one. And she just, we gathered around the piano, and Kate just sat there. She did explain later she was a bit inhibited by all these guys who she kind of knew about and respected, standing around watching her, you know, play through her song. And as you say, she was only 18 or 19 years old.
Show us what you got, kid, you know.
Exactly. And she played and sang flawlessly. And it was the hairs on the back of your neck going up, listening to a talent like this. You know, it was special. We just knew this is a special girl, this one. And she was so down to earth as well, always asking if we wanted a cup of tea or, you know, and you know, a little bit, no studio experience. As you know, she went on to produce her own albums and did a brilliant job of doing it. And she matured so quickly over the years. And I kept listening to the work she was putting out. I only played on the first 2 albums, but it was a joy working with her. She didn't offer much in the way of what we were playing. She was just delighted to hear her songs that she had played on piano for so long to be amalgamated with a band.
Sure.
And I just loved what we did.
Yeah.
And was full of compliments for everything we played.
Yeah. Any favorite tracks that you cut with her?
Them Heavy People. I liked Them Heavy People. I liked the way the band played together on that and how it came together. Kind of reggae feel to it. James and the Gold Gun, I enjoyed playing that. And on Wuthering Heights, I didn't actually play bass. It was Andrew Powell that played bass. I played 12-string guitar on that.
Oh, very nice. Okay. Well, that was like her first big hit, I guess. And
it was the first big hit, yeah.
Quite a classic, yeah. And, you know, she had it, for her age, she was very mature. You know, those lyrics that she's writing about sound like something that a woman in her 30s might have written. You know? Yeah.
You know, she was influenced by the Bronte sisters with the Wuthering Heights tales and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And you can tell that in the sophisticated way she wrote her lyrics. They were just great. They would draw you in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, did you get a chance to see her when she did her string of reunion shows a couple of years back?
No, I didn't see any of the shows.
I wish she would have made a DVD. I think there was a live album, but there was never any visual accompaniment. And
Yeah, well, I heard that
stunning.
they had planned to record the last shows, but there were technical issues that prevented from going ahead. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Well, I heard it was really cutting edge visually, like some of the things that happened. It's like you'd see birds flying and suddenly they'd burst through the screen and fly over your head and stuff. That kind of, it's like, knowing her, it's not surprising.
A big Peter Gabriel influence there as well.
Oh, huge. Yeah, she was, he was a big influence on her. And, she appeared on a few of his albums, like Games Without Frontiers. You hear her singing in the background. And
Don't Give Up. Great song.
Oh yeah, a beautiful ballad. And that whole gated snare drum sound that Peter used, she totally appropriated that for her own stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And used it to great effect, on albums like The Dreaming. The Dreaming, that's like her most whack album. That's just so wild and bizarre and great Fairlight stuff going on there. She really used that to great effect.
Oh, she got into the sounds big time, and they complemented the kind of progressive music she was writing.
Yeah, it's funny because there aren't a whole lot of female progressive rock artists, and I wouldn't exactly call her progressive rock, but I found that the progressive crowd really loves her music because it's got enough sophistication in there to grab onto and love. Yeah. It's a short list. I'd say her and maybe Joni Mitchell.
Yeah.
It's a short list of female artists that just had that kind of progressive edge that kind of got them in that ballpark.
Yeah.
So great stuff. Well, I was wondering if there's anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap it up. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat today.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I know you're in Atlanta. I think I told you my manager is in Atlanta.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I've visited the Coke factory.
Okay. Yeah. I love living down here. It's kind of like the New York of the South, and it's kind of a liberal pocket in the middle of the countryside, shall we say?
Right.
So
yeah. I took a trip there, and then we drove up to Chattanooga, and then up to Nashville, and then. And then we flew back home. Yeah, but it was great. Yeah. Really. Oh, we went to Memphis as well. We had to visit Graceland.
Oh, nice. Very good. Yeah. So much history up there in Tennessee in particular. I mean, Georgia has its own history as well with the likes of the Allman Brothers and that sort of Southern music. But, up in Nashville and those areas, there's just so much history and just it's only 4 hours from Atlanta too, so I like to go up there occasionally and catch a show in Nashville or it's booming. I mean, it's not what it was even 15 years ago. It's gotten enormous. It's like and quite a hub for music of all types. Actually, you think it's the home of country music, and it is, but if you're a world-class artist, you may be there anyway, and not even country, so. So tell us what's next for you. What you got planned? Anything?
It just keeps going as far as the writing's concerned. Writing has always been a passion for me, and I just find I'm devoting more and more time to it as I'm getting on in life. I'm 71 now, and
you look great. You don't look a day over 52.
Well, thanks. But I want to be creative. I get such a thrill out of creating something from nothing. Sure. So, but then another thing I mentioned earlier, it's like, how can I top that? And I sit down and write a song, and it comes out, and I think, I'm happy with this. I'm happy with the way it's going. So I surprise myself sometimes. I like to think that I have a quality control, and I'll reject a lot of things that I think that's not quite there, so I'll move on to something else. And I'm glad I can still be creative and I'll put out 2 albums in a year in 2020. So, you know, I'm still enjoying doing that. So it's all about.
Where's the best place to get your solo albums?
CD Baby. They are just, although I'm not sure if they're still doing hard copies. So
Yeah.
probably as my own website is davidpaton.com.
Okay.
And the albums are available from there. That's the best place to go.
Is communication available on the website too?
It's not.
No,
That's
not yet.
That's me being silly. No, I'll put out a song and put it on Facebook and YouTube, and it's not available to download.
Okay.
But you know, I just want people to hear what I'm doing. That's all.
Yeah, well, I'd love to crank it up in the car. So if you ever get the urge to make it downloadable, please let us know. That'd be great. All right. Well, David, thank you so much for being a guest. I've enjoyed your music for so many years, and I'm looking forward to hearing some new stuff. And
That's great.
yeah, please come back anytime. I would love to chat again sometime. I'm working on a show kind of angle called Peer to Peer, where I find different peers and put them together for a round table chat. So if you'd be down for that, I'll see who I can round up. That would be a fun thing to do maybe sometime this summer. That'd be good. All right.
Okay, Sean.
Much love to you. Take care. Stay safe and have a good weekend.
You too.
All right. Take care, David.
Okay.